How many of you have ever forged your parents' signature? All of us. That's amazing. You guys are going to hell. Okay, you're liars. That's why you're here. We'll pray for you afterwards. I'm with you. If we've all done this to where it's like a school field trip, or it's a form that needed to be filled out and sent home, and let's be honest, it never got home, and we just filled that sucker right out. I think some of our teachers like, bro, you didn't even take that home. Like, I just gave it to you a minute ago. Like, oh, yeah, it's good. Mom got it. Solid. But this idea of like falsifying a name on a document is a story I want to come back to in a moment. But we're in the Sermon on the Mount. We've been going through this teaching of Jesus, one of his most iconic teachings, where he's up on a hill and he's just unloading for about 22 minutes. If you read it all the way through, some of the most profound teachings, some of the most memorable statements that you might have memorized from the Bible come from Jesus' words here on this sermon. And we're in this section of the Sermon on the Mount where Jesus is saying a statement, you've heard it said, which may have been from the Old Testament, the old law, a command of God from the nation of Israel, and how they would have been instructed to live their life. So they would build their life around this commandment of the law. And it's like, you've heard it said for thousands of years. This is what you've heard it said. And now this is what the religious leaders are teaching you now. Your pastors, your religious leaders, this is what they're saying now. But hey, I'm going to tell you the heart behind the command. I'm going to tell you the heart behind the law, behind the command of God in the first place. And he restates it, but I tell you. And he speaks with such authority to help redefine what was actually being misdefined by these religious teachers. And so we've covered some hot ones like lust and adultery and divorce. And now he's going to launch into one, it's called oaths. You should not take an oath or make a vow. And so let's just read it. Matthew 5, verse 33 is where we'll pick up. It says this, again, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the vows you have made. So you've heard it said, do not break your oath, do not break the vow that you have made to God. And so what would happen in the Israelite culture under God's rule and authority in their life, sometimes they would make a vow to God. Say, God, I vow that I will never steal another donkey from another human being. Or I vow that I will never do this. Or I vow that, God, if this happens, God, if you allow it to rain and water our crops, I vow that I will do this. And it was a pretty common practice that you could invoke the name of God in some type of promise that you were bound to. And if you broke that vow before God, then there would be consequences or God's judgment would be upon you. So if you had the cojones to actually invoke the God card for something and you didn't follow through with it, there was some problems coming your way. It was a big deal. It was a significant deal to make a command or to make a vow or an oath using God's name. And so it comes from, let me read Deuteronomy and Leviticus and Numbers, one section where we see this idea of the nation of Israel, God's people, making a vow to God. So in Deuteronomy 6:13, it says, it is the Lord your God you shall fear. Him shall you serve, and by his name shall you swear. So you shouldn't swear by any other name. You shouldn't make any other promises. If you're going to make a vow, make it with Yahweh, God. Leviticus 19:12 says, you shall not swear by my name falsely. So caution, if you're going to drop my name, don't swear by my name falsely, and so profane the name of your God. I am the Lord. So don't break the vow. Don't lie when you say you're going to do something. Numbers 32 says, if a man vows a vow to the Lord, he shall not break his word. God would view this vow that you would make. And there were some really unique vows that were made. Like, you ever heard of the Nazirite vow? They would never cut their hair. They wouldn't touch any dead animals. They wouldn't drink any wine. And God would use them supernaturally. And it was a vow. They were set apart. And if you chose to take a Nazirite vow, then if you broke that, there would be consequences and God's judgment would be upon you. You should not break a vow that you make with God. And it was this idea in the Old Testament, in the Israelite culture, that you would do this. And it's kind of like, putting your name on something. Like an artist, when you paint a painting, and some of you have painted some horrific paintings in your life, and you haven't put your name on it, rightfully so, because it's atrocious. Because if you put your name on it, you'd be like, that's embarrassing. My name is associated with this piece of, you're calling it, oh, it's abstract art, Myron. You don't get me. It's abstract. It's beautiful in its own way. That's art. But like when you put your name on something, you are associated with that something. And so oftentimes in these vows that people would make with God, they're assigning God's name, who's perfect, who's holy, who's righteous, is to have a holy reverence and healthy fear of. And you invoke his name on something in your life, man, that's serious. Because if it doesn't happen, after you said it's going to happen, you make God look like a fool. You make God look like he's not a good God, not a powerful God, and he almost looks like a false pagan God. And so when you put your name on something, your name's associated. Anybody like the movie Elf? It's almost elf season, people. Like, wait, it's almost elf season. It's like Hobbes, right? The publisher, the guy, when he comes back with the book and the boss comes and says, what is this? Is this your signature? Yeah, on 2 blank pages. He signed off, put his name on something not great. And there were consequences. There was punishment because of his name being tied to something that wasn't honored for producing a full-blown children's book cover to cover. It's kind of like you forging your parent's name on a form. And then your parent might get called in and say, hey, little Johnny, well, not little, probably like middle school is when you forge the name, but it's like, hey, he acted out on the field trip. I didn't know he went on. I didn't give him permission to go on the field trip. Well, isn't this your signature right here? And now that parent's in an awkward spot of like, well, that kind of is, but it's not actually mine. My name's on it, but I didn't authorize this. And so what happens when you invoke the name of God over a vow that you have, it's as you're forging God's name on something he hasn't called you to. And then you're like, God, why didn't it happen? Why didn't you pull through? Why didn't it come to fruition? It was like, hold on a second. It wasn't a part of my will. It wasn't part of my plan. You didn't consult me first. You just slapped my name on it, trying to look fancy, trying to look cool, and trying to make something happen in your own power. And you're making God mocked. You're making him look like a false God, a fake God. And you, I believe, even in your ignorance, will be held to judgment when you make a vow and don't keep it before the Lord. And I think this all ties into the third commandment. You guys know the 10 commandments? So in the third commandment is this. It's come from Exodus 20. It says, you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. Man, you will be found guilty if you take the Lord's name in vain. What does it mean to take the Lord's name in vain? Some of us might be like, okay, GD, JC, cuss words, swear words, using his name in that context, that's taking his name in vain. That's what I was taught as a child. Just don't cuss. You don't, cuss with Jesus' name or God's name in it. But really, the word vain means to dishonor, to disrespect, to misuse and misrepresent the name of God. And so one of the ways in which we take the Lord's name in vain is by calling ourselves a Christian but not following Christ. We want to accept the identity of Jesus as a Christian, but yet it's so offensive in God's eyes, like, yeah, man, you are not operating and not acting and not behaving as if you actually love God. If you actually have reverence towards the holy God, the righteous God. And so we take the Lord's name in vain when we misuse his name, we dishonor his name, when we treat his name flippantly without holy reverence and respect, and we misrepresent the name of God. And so if we want to put his name on our life, don't forge it. Let it be authentic. Don't put God's name on something that he hasn't actually called you into. And so don't take the Lord's name in vain. And this is why it's the third commandment. And this is the idea of a vow. Are we allowed to make vows? Seems like it. There's not a prohibition. Jesus, what he's about to say isn't going to be a prohibition per se. He's just calling us out when we are misusing, misrepresenting, dishonoring, and taking the Lord's name in vain, whether intentionally or in our ignorance. His name means something. I think about, the Bible says, and I think it's Ephesians or Colossians, it says, every knee will bow that Jesus is Lord. The name above every other name, right? That heaven and earth and every knee shall bow before this name. There's something powerful about this name. It's to be revered and honored and held in high esteem for Yahweh, God of the universe. And to invoke the name of Yahweh, to invoke the name of God, was a serious act in making a vow. And so these Pharisees and these religious leaders that Jesus is really rebuking by saying, you've heard it said, and these religious leaders are teaching you, but I tell you, he was coming at them and saying, you guys are misinterpreting and misapplying this, and you're missing the whole point, because they've created a loophole system in this vow oath game. They've created a loophole system. They would swear by something significant. They wouldn't invoke the name of God, but they would swear by something significant to let you know they were serious. Like, you can trust me. I'm going to convince you because I'm swearing by something significant. So verse 34, this is where he gets to it. But I tell you, so you've heard it said, don't swear, make an oath, or if you make an oath, don't break it. And this is what it says. But I tell you, do not swear an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is God's throne, or by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make even one hair white or black. All you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. Have you ever tried to convince somebody that you were serious when you really weren't? You ever been trapped up in a lie and you're like, no, dude, I swear I didn't take your cookie. I swear by my mama. I swear by my grandmama. Cross my heart, hope to die, stick 1,000 needles in my eye. This whole elementary playground recess kind of crap. Like, we tried to invoke something, I swear. And we may even go to the lengths of, I swear to God, I swear to God, I swear to God. And sometimes you might be right and thinking, I didn't do that. You are falsely accusing me. I'm telling you the truth, but somebody's not believing you. So then you try to go above and beyond to convince them that you're legitimate, you're serious, and you're telling the truth. And so you invoke the name of your mama, your grandmama, whatever thing you want to do, or you might even say, I swear to God. And sometimes when we're caught in a lie, we will even invoke the name of God to try to convince somebody to where we're trying to get away with a lie. And there's this loophole that Jesus is addressing. This whole loophole system was swearing by something significant, but not actually God's name. And so here was the loopholes. The Pharisees and the religious leaders would go, okay, I could swear by heaven, right? Not by God, but by heaven, and I would let you know that I'm serious about this. Whatever you're saying, accusing me of, or I'm promising you, I'm vowing to fulfill some commitment, I swear by heaven, I'll do it. Then it says swear by earth, anything created, right? Sometimes pagan religions would swear by like a gold engraved image or an idol of some kind. I swear by the cow. I swear by this item that I'm good for it. So it's something man-made, something by the earth, something created. Swear by Jerusalem. The loophole was you could swear by the holy city, but you couldn't swear facing the holy city, was the loophole that these Pharisees and religious leaders put into place. Or you could swear by the temple, but you actually couldn't swear by the gold of the temple because the gold was significant. It was more serious. So they had this loophole system to where they would try to make themselves look more impressive and convince you of their vows and their promises. And they would swear by certain things, but not certain things. And they made this whole game about it. They said you could swear by the altar in the temple, but you couldn't swear by the gift that was being sacrificed on the altar. They're manipulating the phrasing, and they're trying to avoid actually putting God's name on their vow so that they could somehow avoid the punishment of their dishonesty or their deception. And there's this whole game that they made up, and Jesus shows up and says, hold up, guys. You're missing the point of this whole vow thing, right? You think if you're going to swear by heaven, you realize that that's God's throne. You're still invoking the name of God when you say swear by heaven. Or when you say swear by earth, he's the creator of all things. You're still swearing by his name. You swear by Jerusalem. That's the holy city of the great king. You swear by your head. Bro, you don't have any control over your body. God has control over your hair color. Like, yeah, you can put some just for men in there or some color of your choice with some tinfoil. But the reality is like you can't supernaturally change your hair color, but he can. He knows you. He formed you. He has sovereignty over your life and your body. So if you want to swear on your own head, which means like being decapitated, I swear on my life. And like God knows your life and knows your death and knows all things about you. So you are still invoking the name of God. He's saying your loophole system's garbage. He's like, so it's better for you to not make any oaths at all. Like, quit trying to fancy your language up and try to convince somebody that you're serious. Simply just say yes and say no. Just let your word be your word. Let yourself just have integrity of what you say is what you mean, and what you mean is true. And you don't have to have this loophole system. And this is really ironic that I'm teaching on this tonight, because this just happened in my own life this past week. It's crazy. I'm a little hesitant to share. It's kind of personal. But you know what? My phrasing around here is ambiguity helps nobody. So I could give you a hypothetical story, but I'll just be real. My wife, she went to get her hair done. She went to go get some white and some black, some gray, some colors, touch-ups. And so she went and she said she was going to go to Walmart afterwards and get some groceries. And so I'm sitting there with the kids and hanging out and all that. And a couple hours went by, and I'm like, I wonder if she's still at Walmart, or if she's not at the Walmart yet. Maybe she can get me some tortilla chips, because I'm a new queso king. I don't know if you know this, but I've been whipping up some queso lately, and it's fire. I need some chips. And so I got on the phone, and I can see her location, and I was like, well, she's supposed to be a curl up and die, but she's not. I was like, probably a bug, right? For 20 minutes, her location was at a different place. And immediately, my heart sank a little bit, and I go, what? Like, what? What's going on? Like, what? And the worst case scenario, I don't know why the worst case scenario goes in your head. She's never given me any reason to not trust her, and I trust her with my whole entire life. But Satan wanted to plant a question of doubt in my head of I wonder what she's doing there. She's hiding something from you. She's lying to you. She's being deceptive. I'm like, technology, man, this thing doesn't fail, right? This has got to be accurate. And finally, she gets home, and I'm a little bummed out, and I was sad for a little bit, and then finally, we just had a conversation about it, and she was incredibly hurt that I didn't trust her. And I kind of interrogated, what were you doing? Did you really go to somewhere that you were supposed to go? And again, worst case scenario, thinking she's probably meeting somebody, and you know where my brain probably goes. Although she's never given me a reason to do that. And now she could have been like, I swear to God, I swear by my head, I swear by the temple, I swear by the gold, I swear by everything. She simply said, I'm telling you the truth. I was here and I was there. And I still didn't believe her. It was hard. And it took me a moment, and Satan I think he was just trying to plant doubt in my head and cause division in my marriage. But eventually I had to get to a point to where I believed her, because she said her yes was yes and her no was no, and she was being completely straightforward, and I have to take her word on it. She doesn't have to fluff it up. She doesn't have to try to swear by something. Doesn't have to try to convince me. She can just be completely honest, and I have to believe her word because I love her, and she loves me, and I know that she would never do that to me. And so let your yes be yes and your no be no. Even if somebody's accusing you of something you never did. Even if you feel justified, or you trying to convince somebody of something to fulfill a promise, or some justification of why you flaked on a commitment. I swear to God, this happened. Just be honest. Be open. Because verse 37 says, all you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. I found this phrasing interesting. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. All of our filler excuses, all of our elaborate exaggerations to try to convince somebody of what's true comes from the evil one. And here's what I think he means by this. Let's go back to Genesis chapter 3 for a moment, in the garden where Adam and Eve were there, and God made the garden and said, hey guys, you can eat of any tree that you want, but do not eat of the tree that's in the middle of the garden. That's it. Don't eat of it. And what happens in chapter 3, the serpent shows up to Eve, and this is what it says, chapter 3, verse 2 of Genesis. The serpent said, hey, did God say not to eat of the tree? And the woman said to the serpent, verse 2, we may eat the fruit of the tree in the garden, but God did say, you must not eat the fruit of the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it. She added something. And you must not touch it, or you will die. She added something to God's command of just don't eat it. She said, well, we can't touch it either, or we will die. And then Satan goes, come on, bro, you ain't going to die. God's holding out on you, knowing that once you eat it, you're going to be like God, knowing everything, all things, become omniscient. And what does Eve do? She's deceived by the enemy, by the evil one, because she added something to the truth. And so I think what he's referring to is, hey, when you add something to the truth to try to convince somebody it's true, that's Satan using you to manipulate and deceive yourself. You don't have to try to fluff it up. You don't have to try to, exaggerate in a way in which really will convince somebody of what's true. Just what is true, let be true. Let your yes be your yes and your no be your no. Anything outside of that is sin. Anything outside of that is coming from the evil one who will plant doubt in your head. He will deceive you and lead you down a path that you don't want to go. And will cause you to become a person with no integrity, that no one will trust, no one will believe you when you actually are being honest because you haven't become a trustworthy person. And I think this is so applicable in our generation. If I think about maybe not so much the oaths and the vows, but let me just take it to a surface level idea of oaths and vows. Commitment. Hey, you said you were going to do this. You said you were going to meet me. You said you were going to show up and help me. You said you were going to go do this. You were going to join here. You were going to do this. You're going to come to work. You're going to come. You're going to do whatever you're saying you're going to do. Just do what you say. Be willing to fulfill your commitments. Like there's such a non-committalness inside of us. And I don't know where it comes from. Probably sin. Probably our selfish desires of our flesh to where we want to flake. We want to keep our options open and see what's the best thing in the moment, and it robs us of actually committing, being men and women of our word. And when things go wrong and we have to flake and cancel, we come up with all kinds of excuses. We add to it. Satan deceiving you to destroy a relationship, destroy your integrity, and undermine your trustfulness with people. But man, if you flake, just be honest, man. I'm choosing this over that. I know that sounds so insensitive, but that's what you're doing. Like, hey, I'd rather go to this than fulfill what I already told you. Hey, boss, I know that you hired me and you would pay me to do this job, but you know what? I'm just not going to come in today. Fulfill your commitments. And when you give a reason of why you can't fulfill your commitments or fulfill your vows, or you're trying to convince somebody this time will be different. This time will be different. Look at your track record. Look at your reputation that precedes you. And you wonder why people don't trust you. Because you haven't let your yes be your yes and your no be your no. And you fluffed it all up. And you're missing the point of being a committed, trustworthy man or woman of integrity. It's kind of like the boy who cried wolf. Anybody familiar with that? Is it like I don't know, not a fairy tale, but it's kind of just like an allegory story. The boy is crying wolf, and eventually people come running to his rescue, and there's no wolf. And he cries wolf again, and people come to his rescue. I might be butchering this. This is how it goes in my head. Wolf. No, it's like a dog woofing. Wolf. Wolf. I'm really good with words. Cries wolf. And they run to rescue him, and there's no wolves. I got to think so hard when I say it. And then eventually, when a wolf actually does show up and the boy cries, hey, there's a wolf. The story's not really landing because I can't say the stupid word. When the wolf isn't there, when the wolf is there and he's crying, no one's going to believe him because he's desensitized them. We've had sensory adaptation is the right word, right? So when you constantly flake or you're non-committal or you invoke the name of God and you swear, I'm going to do it, I promise this time's going to be different, and yet you fail, you make God look like a fool, you mock him, you misrepresent his name, and then no one's going to want to trust you or your God anymore. And so we have to be careful to not have sensory adaptation or desensitization to the idea of committing and not fulfilling our commitments and being men and women of integrity. And so I have 3 quick little points here around commitment. Is number 1, only make commitments you will keep. Man, only make commitments you will keep. And I know vows are a little bit more significant, right? And again, a vow before God is really significant. It should not be broken. Numbers tells us this. The Old Testament tells us this. And you can read Bible accounts of people who made a vow before God and broke it, and there was some heavy consequences paid out for them. And so vows are, but it starts with commitments. Think about it. Because if you're training yourself in commitments, When you actually get to a serious situation where you're going to make a vow before God or to another human being called your spouse at the altar, and you make a vow to love them and to serve them until death do us part, you have trained yourself to fulfill your commitments so that when a bigger commitment of a bigger vow comes, you've trained yourself to be a man or a woman who's trustful and has integrity and will fulfill your commitments. So start training yourself and fulfilling your commitments. Only make commitments you will keep. And man, if there ever comes a time when you can't fulfill your commitments, be honest. So direct and so honest. No excuses, no fluff. Don't add anything to the truth. Just be honest. The second thing is this: be slow in making commitments. Man, be slow. We make a lot of rash decisions in this life. A lot of spontaneous, impromptu decisions in this life. But when it comes to your commitments, when it comes to your vows to a human being, when it comes to a commitment that you'll make in the workforce to be an educator or a first responder, a duty to serve, a vow to serve and protect. I mean, if you're in the courtroom and you vow to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, do it. And do it because you're going to honor God in keeping your word and keeping your vow and being a man or woman of your word. But hey, be slow in making your commitments. Be thoughtful in them. Look at your time, look at your energy, look at your resource, look at your availability, and be patient, be slow. Now, this is not permission for you to be a sluggard and never commit to anything in your entire life and live in your mom's basement forever, going waiting on God. You make decisions, you make commitments, but be thoughtful and be patient and be slow. Make the right commitments that you will actually keep so you don't undermine your integrity. And the third thing is this: don't play the God card. Don't play the God card. And be very careful when you invoke the name of God, the name of Yahweh, the name of Jesus Christ into a vow that you will make in this life. Jesus says, don't make any vow at all. By heaven, by earth, by Jerusalem, by your head, by the temple, by the gold in the temple, by the gift at the altar, by the altar. Stop finding these loopholes of trying to convince people that you're serious and you will fulfill your vow this time, and just start earning a reputation of a man or a woman who will fulfill those vows, and you don't have to play the God card. Because when you play the God card, when you put his name on it, you better represent him well. And you better prayerfully consult him. And God, is this your will? Is this the commitment you want me to take? Is this the vow you want me to take? Because if your name's going to be on it, I want to honor the name of Christ, the name above every other name. I want to hold your name in reverence and holy and awe and respect and high esteem, because you are God and you deserve my worship, my praise, and for me to honor the name of Yahweh, to honor the name of God. And so live a life of integrity. Train yourself now for commitments that are little so you can fulfill the commitments that will really matter in this life. I use this illustration all the time about dating. Like the way in which we date in our modern culture is swiping right, swiping left, and just finding people, and meeting people, and getting set up with people. And we're just running from one date, one relationship to the next, testing the waters and expanding my fishing pool to see if there's somebody out there better. And as you date in that way over and over and over and over and over again, you're not training yourself for a healthy marriage. You're training yourself for a divorce, because when someone better comes along or you're tired of this one, you throw them away. And the same thing with commitments. Man, when you make commitment after commitment after commitment, but you fail and flake and don't follow through on them, you're not training yourself for a vow of following God for the rest of your life, for honoring the marriage vows that you will take, honoring any commitment that you will make to God and to a fellow human being. You're not training yourself in fulfilling them. You're training yourself in flaking on them. And so be slow in making your commitments, and make the ones that you can keep, and train yourself in this walk of integrity. And don't add the fluff. Don't add anything to it. It comes from the evil one. Just be honest. Just be direct. Just be you. And don't try to be somebody that you're not. Be the most trustworthy person possible. You see, Christians, I believe, those who carry the name of Christ should act like Christ as best they can. Yes, you need grace. Yes, you'll slip up. You're not perfect like he was, but we pursue perfection. Because of what he did on the cross as payment for my sin, he deserves a life surrendered to him, representing his name well, not misrepresenting his name. By taking his name in vain, by calling myself a Christian, but not being obedient to what Christ says to do. And so I believe if the church, if Christians, if young people like yourself, and we keep inviting more people and more people and more people, and we get more Christians to do this, we will become the most trustworthy, reliable, and consistent people on the face of the planet. And when we accurately represent the name of Jesus in our lives, it'll be contagious for other people. They'll go, yeah, you're not judgmental like a lot of Christians I know. You're not hypocritical like a bunch of Christians I know. You guys are real. You're the real deal. You're authentic. What you say, you do. You're transparent. You deal with your sin in real ways. I see a life surrendered and following Christ and pursuing his truth and his word, and it's compelling for people. But if we're honest, sometimes we drop the ball with our commitments. We misrepresent the name of Christ when we call ourselves a Christian and don't follow his will and his way. And so would you reclaim this tonight? Would you begin to rewrite your past reputation of being flaky and being the most committed, trustworthy, dependable, reliable man and woman of integrity ever? And if we do that collectively, the body of Christ is going to become irresistible to the outside world, because they want what we have here. And so will you take it, the name of Christ, and go? Let your yes be yes, no be no. Men and women of integrity. And don't drop the God card. And don't put his name on it if you're not serious, because you'll misrepresent his name. So Father, I thank you for tonight. God, I pray right now that we would just be men and women of integrity. God, we would just be willing to be so faithful and be so consistent and be so committed to the things that you're calling us to. God, you would help us to not invoke your name inappropriately. God, any vow that we would take in this life would honor you, would bring glory to your name, would represent you above all things, bring you honor and bring you glory and bring you praise. And we, collectively, would be some of the most irresistible people on the face of the planet. The best employees, the best siblings, the best parents one day, the best classmates, the best roommates, the best whatever. Because we are following you with all that we got, and you are changing us from the inside out. And we are living a life of integrity, radical integrity. So Holy Spirit, come as we sing. We invite you in to change our hearts, to change our minds, the way we think, and walk out of here a little bit different, being led by you to accomplish your purpose and your will you have set before us. In Jesus' name I pray.